Buckeyes Talk on a Friday, everyone, this week. Keeping you on your toes. We appreciate your flexibility. Of course, comments and questions, we will take those, the super chats as well, to help us go in here at the Voice of College Football. Buckeyes live for a 269th time. Right next to me, Tony Gerdeman, BuckeyeHuddle.com, the Buckeye Weekly podcast, multiple times per week, typically. And then we got Steve Hellwagon down below, Bucknuts 247 Sports. Guys, we appreciate it on this final day of the month and on into June.
Good to be here.
So, Steve, we call upon you first and foremost because you are the foremost in analyzing these preview magazines each and every year. And we are one day away from June.
Ta-da!
And that's what I think of. When I think college football, I think June, of course. Well, if I got to think college football in June, then and I do, then I think preseason magazines, and there it's on display.
I'm like Leslie Chow in the Hangover. Ta-da!
You do it well, Steve. Now the nuts and bolts.
Kevin would really appreciate that. He loves that.
He
quotes that movie. He quotes that movie pretty often. It's some of the quotes are not safe for work. So there you go.
Well, Steve, you've covered the entertainment angle and the aesthetics for us, and so we appreciate the intro. That was well done. Now to the nuts and bolts. What came as a surprise? What were your first takeaways?
Well, they have Georgia number 1, and then they have Ohio State number 2. So there's your gratuitous Kirby Smart, big picture of him in Georgia number 1. And then Ohio State number 2, what is it? Texas 3. So 2 teams from the SEC, right there. And then Oregon 4, from a second one from the Big Ten. Ole Miss. Now, the next time our good friend Lane Kiffin does anything this big will be the first time, obviously. Michigan 6. Do you know when you flip to the page on Michigan in this magazine, which I will do right now, when you turn to the page for the Big Ten about Michigan in the Big Ten section, they have 2 pages on Michigan, the reigning, defending national champions in all of college football. 15-0 they went, it says here. 15-0. My God, they had a great year. Like Gary from the Old Town Tavern says to the guys at Cheers, I didn't think you had it in you. I mean, that's when they got Wade Boggs or whatever it was, the whole thing. They got him on a joke was the deal. They were trading jokes back and forth, and Gary comes over and tells Sam and Carla and everybody, I didn't think you had it in you. I honestly didn't think they had this in them, but they did. I digress. Let me read you the returning starters for the University of Michigan. They have a tight end, number 18, Colston Loveland, 6'5", 245-pound junior, indentured servant. Otherwise, he'd be in the NFL. Let's see. They have a defensive tackle, 55, Mason Graham, 6'3", 318-pound junior, indentured servant, or he would be in the NFL. By that, I mean they have to stay 3 years. Cornerback, number 2, Will Johnson, everybody's All-American. And I thought it was a ripoff that they gave whatever the DB award to Cooper DeJean, who didn't win a meaningful game all season. This guy, Will Johnson, was legitimate to me. So 6'2", 202 pounds, junior, indentured servant, or he'd be in the NFL. And then strong safety, number 7, Makari Page, 6'4", 208. Wow, he's a heavy hitter. Senior. Those are the 4, count them, 4 returning starters for the University of Michigan. They do have Donovan Edwards, who did chew up and spit out Ohio State a couple of years ago back at running back to replace Blake Corum. They kind of split time a little bit. But, I don't see how they do it. I don't know. You're counting on too many first-year people. And this is going to be Ohio State in 2025. There'll be about 4 people in bold print on the Ohio State list next year. and then a bunch of transfers coming in from South Carolina or, Syracuse or Boston College or wherever they can find help. They're going to have the help wanted sign out there in December, looking for help for 2025. So, to me, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how you put them sixth, and I don't know how you expect that team to win 10 games. I don't see it. Somebody could tell me, I admit Graham and Johnson are potential All-Americans, no question. And they're going to have to play like it to pull that team along, in my opinion. So that was probably the biggest takeaway I had from that magazine was why in the hell is Michigan number 6? Do people not take into account that you can't replace 18 starters and expect to win at nearly the same clip? I don't know.
I would tend to go along with you, Steve, but it's almost like when there are complaints about who got left out of the NCAA tournament, and then the next statement is, of course, in question, well, who do you kick out to bring in? So, to Tony, where do you think Michigan's placed in regards to your perspective, and who should be higher?
Well, as Steve knows, a great man once said, to be the man, you've got to beat the man.
The nature boy.
So, old Nate said it, but I think 6 is high. And I understand they lose a bunch of starters. They've got a bunch of guys that have a ton of experience. They got a starting offensive lineman from Northwestern. All of the guys on the defensive line have played a ton. Josiah Stewart has been a starter forever and was a guy that was an effective pass rusher for him last year. Derek Moore has been playing forever at defensive end. Kenneth Grant is a big dude and is right up there with some of the attention that Mason Graham is getting. And they've got linebackers with starting experience from other schools. I think the safety situation and the secondary is a concern that I have for them because you've lost Rod Moore. You're not as deep at corner as you would like to be. And once again, you're relying on players from smaller schools coming in to try and lift up that room. So I think secondary is a concern. Offensively, I have no idea. I don't know. Are all of their receivers 2s or 3s? Is there a 1 in there? I don't know. I think the number 1 is Colston Loveland maybe, but the defenses know that. So he's going to need some help. Donovan Edwards needs to get back to the 2022 Donovan Edwards because the 2023 Donovan Edwards 4 yards of carry is not going to cut it. So we got to figure out which is the real one. I think he was dealing with injuries last year. But their schedule, it's Texas at home week 2. I think everybody expects Texas. Everybody that isn't a Michigan fan expects Texas to win that game. Then you've got to go to, they should lose to Ohio State. It's in Columbus. That should be a loss there. The Oregon game at home, I think most people expect that to be Oregon right now outside of the Michigan fandom. So if there are 3, I don't think a 3-loss Michigan is necessarily getting in because if they lose those 3 games, they have no win to trump any of those losses. And so they need to win one of those 3 to get in. And if they don't win any of those 3, I don't see them getting in. And I was a little surprised with the playoff picks from Lindy's. They've got 5 SEC teams in. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but 5 just seems like a lot, and only 3 Big Ten teams with Ohio State, Oregon, and Michigan. Although some of these matchups in the first round, like I wouldn't mind seeing Alabama at Michigan in the first round. I'd be in favor of that one.
Yeah. I was going to say, look at their schedule. They also play USC at home. And they go at Washington, which is kind of a mirror image of Michigan. The 2 teams that played for the national championship both lost everybody. The coach and everybody is gone. So they're kind of mirror images of one another. But do you expect them to go to Seattle, Washington and win that game? I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what Washington's got. So yeah, their playoff matchups, Georgia, Ohio State, obviously 1 and 2. Then you don't put Texas, which is their number 3 team, at number 3 because the 4 highest placing conference champions get the prevailing seeds and the first round buys, so the winners essentially of the SEC, Big Ten, ACC, and Big 12 championship games are going to be 1 through 4. They have Florida State winning the ACC and Oklahoma State winning the watered down Big 12. And then, although, you trade out Texas and Oklahoma, but you do get Utah in that bargain. So, kind of a half step back, perhaps. Certainly in name and TV viewership and whatever, they're taking a huge hit. Their first round games, they have Liberty as the group of 5 team that gets in as the 5th conference champion. They Conference USA. Does that sound right?
Liberty is, Are they? Is that USA?
Yes.
Okay. And they would play number 5.
Go ahead.
They would play at Texas. They would play at number 5, Texas. Missouri. Number 11 would play at number 6, Oregon. Number 10, Notre Dame. At number 7, Ole Miss. And then, as Tony said, number 9, Alabama. At number 8, Michigan. And then as you go through, the Fiesta Bowl would be Oklahoma State versus Texas. The Peach Bowl would be Georgia versus Michigan. The Rose Bowl, January 1st, would be Ohio State versus Ole Miss. And the Sugar Bowl would be Florida State against Oregon. And then the semifinals are in Miami and Dallas. The Miami one, the Orange Bowl, they would have Georgia against Texas. And then the Cotton Bowl in Dallas is Ohio State versus Oregon. And then obviously Georgia versus Ohio State. They've got Georgia winning 27-17 over Ohio State. No trip to the White House for the Buckeyes to see either Biden or Trump in the spring of 2025.
RFK Jr., baby.
What's that?
RFK Jr.?
Yeah. Something will happen. Something will happen that will throw a wrench into all this at some point. And, usually it involves a team like Ole Miss. Yeah. Usually it involves a team like Ole Miss or Texas A&M not playing up, or Florida State playing up to what you thought they were going to. So anything that Jimbo Fisher has ever touched never comes to fruition, except that one time it did. So
one of the things in these projections is Georgia gets to play 2 of their playoff games in Atlanta, and one in the quarterfinals, and the others in the national championship game, which isn't a bad deal for them. It also appears as though they have Ohio State and Oregon playing 3 times.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I think you could set the over-under on 1.5, and I would probably take the over on that this year between those 2 teams. At some point, they will meet again outside of Autzen Stadium.
Yeah.
Ooh, Ed Rogers, Michigan will play in the Pinstripe Bowl. I read it, but I didn't say it. That's you, Ed. That's you saying it.
That's you guys.
I'm giving the Maize and Blue a little bit more respect. I think that 9.5 number is fairly on track. Gun to head, I'm going under. I'm going 9-3 right now as it stands, but I think it's a close call. And as has been pointed out in the chat, if you run through the models of previous seasons and throw them into the 12 team, 10-2 in the Big Ten, it gets you in. 9-3 is a probability against, but you've got a shot. Mm-hmm. And as Tony outlines, if they lose the 3 that we're talking about, and USC's like a 7-5, 8-4 team, then they don't have that win. But again, being a guy that likes the odds, I take Michigan in one of those 3.
I don't have a huge issue with that. I think they will be underdogs in all 3 of those. But you've got 2 of them at home. You shouldn't lose both of those at home. You should be able to beat somebody, and maybe getting Texas early is a good thing for the defense, but maybe it's a bad thing for Alex Orji but also Texas won't have much of a chance to look at what Alex Orji does and what they do on offense. So I feel like maybe getting them early better than getting them in like October. It's a non-conference game, so it wouldn't really happen, but the less you know about Michigan, maybe the better for Michigan right now.
The biggest question for me with Michigan, beyond personnel that Steve outlined, is more about who are they going to be on offense? And their quarterback decision to me is more about who do you want to be on offense as opposed to who is the better quarterback. If you select Davis Warren or Jack Tuttle, then you are selecting to be the Michigan of yesteryear. You are the play action team that is run heavy, throw it to the tight end, and there you go. You are basically an upgraded Iowa. Or you transform yourself to being an Alex Orji led, let's run it, let the quarterback run and improvise and design a ton of plays for him, and you're a different deal. And so for me, the decision at quarterback is going to be intriguing, and it's going to lead us into knowing what Michigan's offense is going to look like.
Well, I also wonder about Oregon's defense. I see people talking about it in the chat as well. It's not like their defense has been outstanding, and I don't know how much more outstanding it will be this year. And so they've had issues, but it's, you're talking about Michael Penix giving them issues and USC giving them issues in terms of points. And I don't see either of those players coming back for Michigan this year, but also it's a home game. It's going to be an incredible environment. It's a conference game at home, and if you are good, you should win those games. Like if you are like a decent team, you should win your home games. If you're a good team, you should win your home games, and unless something crazy happens. But I don't know where I'm going to be for that game, whether it's in the press box or sitting in a hotel room or whatever. But that's a game that I'm definitely interested in seeing, because it will tell us. It'll tell us a lot about Michigan, but also it'll give us another good idea of what Oregon is in terms of their situation in the Big Ten, their ability to handle that kind of adversity in November. And, it also depends on what Michigan is by that point. Have they already lost a game or two games? I don't think they will have at that point. And they're probably still going to be pretty confident. And even if they lose the Texas game, I think they'll be over it by then, and they'll be confident again. And, that's going to be a fun one for sure.
USC is the wild card for me because I do believe in DeAnton Lynn. He did wonders on the defensive side at UCLA. Now, are they going to completely revitalize on defense and be something that we saw 20 years ago under Pete Carroll? No. And they didn't acquire any difference makers on defense, but they acquired a bunch of guys. And so maybe DeAnton Lynn can make them capable on defense. And sometimes when you lose an elite dynamic quarterback, other guys step up and you have a more functional, consistent offense where not everyone's standing around waiting for that guy to be Superman and make plays. And you got a guy in Miller Moss who's going to take a 3-step drop. He's going to identify the right guy. That's the plan, at least. And he's going to be able to execute a Lincoln Riley offense, who might be the best offensive mind in football, where it becomes more Lincoln Riley's offense and less Caleb Williams' offense. And maybe they surprise some people.
Yeah, I think this Big Ten with, Ohio State only has to play one of the new teams. Michigan has to play two of them. So for them, it's kind of a great unknown. That's a lot of extra legwork to try and get a handle on two, as opposed to Ohio State just having to
3.
Yeah, start a chapter on Washington, or rather Oregon. So yeah, interesting.
All right, folks, appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. This is our typical Wednesday show, Buckeyes Live. Moved to Friday. You can thank me for that. No, we do appreciate Tony and Steve adjusting their schedules, and you as well. So leave the comments and questions there in the chat. We appreciate the super chat contributions. All right. So we move on to the two scintillating matchups that Buckeye fans will be waiting this entire offseason to consume the first 2 weeks of the season, with the announced kickoffs and networks being, who would have thought a couple years ago, before a new contract was signed, that CBS would be showing Ohio State, or maybe put them off to the side, an Akron University game at 3:30 in week one. But that is the new media system, and that brought us the likes of Maryland and Charlotte in primetime on NBC and other gems.
I was
like
just going to bring that one up. How the hell did that happen?
Steve. That is the go-to.
How the hell did that happen?
And then in week two, it's Western Michigan in primetime, Tony, against the Buckeyes on the Big Ten Network.
Yeah, but when did normally the CBS 3:30 SEC games start? Is it like week 3 or so?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's a throwback to them having the old U.S. Open where they didn't. It may have been an old contract that said it didn't kick in till week 3 because they had U.S. Open the first 2 weeks of September or whatever, and the tennis coverage they couldn't do college football. So, and that contract may have been the one that just ended, even though they lost the U.S. Open 5 years ago in totality to ESPN, I think. So, they didn't used to start SEC coverage till later on. That's why, what was it? Ohio State debuted last year on Saturday at Indiana on CBS, I believe, to kind of jumpstart that package because they didn't have to do an SEC game that day. Yeah, what a terrible bargain for them. I mean, the line has already come out. Ohio State's favored by like 50.5 points over Akron, and that's going to be on CBS. That makes no sense, but all that'll be is like the spring game at Ohio Stadium with Fox. It'll just be a celebration of Ohio State football and everything that's good. Hell, you can interview the coaches and the players during the game if you want. I mean, it's looked like the Met got behind that guy right there. What happened on that? Yeah, he just ran a go. We just figured, we're up 27. We just figured, throw caution to the wind. We'll hit him in stride. And I think those guys, their day's about done.
If you go back to 2022, before CBS and the Big Ten were a thing, their 3:30 season opener was Arizona at San Diego State because of their Mountain West contract. So, like, this will do better than that. They're paying more for it, but they're not paying for this for the week 1 and week 2 stuff because that wasn't part of their SEC deal either. So, college football, any game is going to be more entertaining than watching grown dudes hacking around in the U.S. Open high grass, trying to, shoot a 76 to make the cut on courses that, aren't playable. But so the greens will be much better in Columbus, at least for the Buckeyes. And but 3:30 Saturdays on CBS, it just feels like it should be so much more than Akron at Ohio State, but that's where we're at, and everybody's gonna have to enjoy it and make use of it, and then plan your day around it, and just be glad that you don't have to watch it on Peacock.
Tony, if you've been spending a portion of your off season either defending Ohio State's non-conference schedule or just conceding to it and letting people know, hey, I can't defend it, except the caveat that unlike Michigan, there was a legitimate team, of course, in the non-conference schedule that has since moved to the Big Ten during the time frame in which the game would have been played. And Michigan took no trips to the West Coast these past 2 seasons, while Ohio State would be taking 2. And so there is some defense to Ohio State not playing anyone this year.
It's a terrible non-conference schedule. And when I blasted Michigan's non-conference schedule last year, I would also sometimes say, and we'll be doing the same thing about Ohio State's non-conference schedule next year. So it's bad. It's sure, if you want to say that the Washington thing had to be canceled, and there's only the excuse when you have to go find a new team is like, well, there's only a small pool of teams that you can choose from. And really, you can choose from a much larger pool. It might just cost you more in terms of buyouts and things like that, or it might cost you a win or a loss, which is the real reason that some of these games aren't done. And of course, you can't do like a one-off necessarily with a big school unless you do it in a neutral site, which I hate. But no, there's no reason to defend the non-conference schedule. It's bad. You can see it. It's Akron, it's Western Michigan, it's Marshall. The years where Ohio State has no Power 5 or now Power 4 opponents in the non-conference is very rare. But it's a good thing the season tickets have Michigan on the schedule, because this is not what Ohio State fans have become accustomed to, because every other year there's a big school coming in, because every other, with the home and homes that they almost always have. And so, yeah, this is a bad schedule. I don't think you can really criticize Ohio State in terms of always having a schedule like this, because they're one of the few schools over the last 20 years plus that have kind of reclaimed the premier non-conference scheduling in terms of one good team, one average team, one bad team, and two bad teams when it was 8 conference games. So yeah, these are outlier years for Ohio State. But like Michigan buying out the UCLA games before they were conference opponents, and just not wanting to play those. And so like, let's buy it out. And then I don't replace it with whoever, UConn or Hawaii or Colorado State, whichever schools it was. That's a bit different than, we've got this is going to be a conference game, that sort of thing. So I'm not happy about it. I'd rather see something, going to Notre Dame last year was a bucket list. That's one of those things where, you're everything you've seen on television in the movies, you're actually like standing there at that point. And there's nothing like that on this non-conference schedule, but there will be on future.
Yeah. Ohio State, as part of this announcement, put out a 5-game flex pass that includes Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, and then the Big Ten games against Purdue and Indiana for $289, which is less than $60 per game. So you're actually getting a chance to go see 5 games for less than $60 per game. How competitive those games are going to be, I don't know, but hey, gives you something to do, get out of the house, type thing. So I guess that's how you look at it. So I'll probably have a few people that will take advantage of that and say, okay, I'm not getting to go to Nebraska, Iowa, or Michigan, but I am going to 5 of the games this year. So, whatever. So those games are probably each in the 120 to 150 range, and Michigan probably 200 as a face value. And then secondary market 300-400 probably, but is my imagination.
To address the comment on the screen, our buddy Rob J is making an indictment of me before he actually sees it play out. So I always enjoy those people that actually, precede the actual execution of whatever they're concerned about before it actually happens. So I will say this for my top 25. Yes, Ohio State is going to be ranked appropriate to the opponents on the schedule until they play somebody with a pulse. Yes, we treat, Rob, everyone the same, to the point where I guarantee you, Rob, if you're going to make an idiotic comment like that, what you should do is you should go back and you should look at all my previous top 25s. I guarantee you that I underrank Ohio State versus the AP poll more often than I overrank them. I guarantee it. So that's an unfounded, stupid statement. All right. We appreciate Tony being here. Buckeye Huddle, Buckeye Weekly. What's going on over there?
Just released Buckeye Weekly last night, today, talking about the expectations for Mylan Graham, 5-star wide receiver coming in, and then also discuss some of the more of the information coming out on the college football EA Sports college football game. And at some point today, I'm trying to finish up a Big Ten draft that I'm doing where every Big Ten team drafts a Big Ten player from the current rosters and based on the standings last year. So I think Indiana gets the first pick, and you can only one player from a team can be drafted. So once Dylan Gabriel goes number 1, no more Oregon Ducks can be selected. And so Michigan's draft pool will be like one school by the time it gets down to the final team. So I'm finishing that up, and that'll be at some point this afternoon.
They'll be selecting Indiana's best wide receiver.
Who's that? Michigan? Well, yeah. I mean, or the best available quarterback, maybe. But yeah, I've gone back and forth. I have them selecting a wide receiver, but maybe a quarterback might be the way to go. I don't know.
Steve, Bucknuts.
Yep. Mentioning Mylan Graham, I actually talked to him 2 days ago. He's coming from Fort Wayne, Indiana area, New Haven High School, and he was the number 33 prospect in the country, number 7 wide receiver. He is one of the rare late enrollees. I think 14 of the 21 or 22 guys enrolled early, and now it looks like 6 people will be coming in late, which is Mylan Graham, the wide receiver, Gabe Van Sickle, an offensive lineman, Dominic Kirks, who they flipped from Washington late in the process, defensive lineman from Painesville, Ohio, Demarion Witten, tight end, wide receiver, Max LeBlanc is a tight end from Tennessee, I believe, who's coming in late, and there's one more player that escaping me, maybe a DB or something, that is coming in as well. So those guys will be enrolling on Monday for the start of the summer semester, and will immediately be thrust into Coach Mick purgatory, whatever that involves during the summer. I presume a heavy regimen of lifting and running is probably the 2 things that I think are probably going to happen for those guys here in the next 2 months. So, Mylan Graham, to me, sounded like a guy who is intent on coming in and trying to push his way into the 2 deep as a true freshman. And it's an uphill battle, obviously, but there's only one experienced wide receiver on the roster, and that's Emeka Egbuka, because they lost both Fleming, to Penn State, and Harrison to the NFL, and then nobody else really played much. So, Tate Ennis played a little bit, but didn't do much. So, and Ballard's never really played yet, in 3 years. So, they've got a bunch of guys who, are hoping to get spots in the 2 deep, but, coming out of the spring, Ennis was hurt, so he really didn't get to prove it or show it, in the spring, although you expected the starters to be Tate, Ennis, and Egbuka. But Jeremiah Smith had such a huge spring that you got to think he's number 2 right now behind Egbuka, and Tate would probably be number 3, and then Ennis 4, Ballard 5, maybe Rogers 6. I don't know. It kind of gets murky from there. So I think that Mylan Graham is going to come in and have a chance to shake some things up. And if, he plays well in preseason camp, he could be out there, in those early season games to see what he's capable of doing. He is certainly you don't want to lose sight of him just because he wasn't the number 1 overall player in the country, Jeremiah Smith, and because he wasn't there for spring football. He's still got a chance to impact this team this year. Had a great interview with him that we posted. Got some other odds and ends on our site. Bill Kurlick talked about 14 prospects in the 2025 class and their likelihood to sign with Ohio State, whether it's hot, lukewarm, cold, however you want to, look at it. He broke it down, so gave you an idea of some of the guys that could be looking at the Buckeyes for that 2025 class, finishing off what should be another top 2, 3, 4 class, whatever it ends up.
With Mylan Graham, one of the things we talked about is I went through and looked at the history of Ohio State true freshman wide receivers and like what to expect for him. And I took off the top 4 and just eliminated them, which is Ted Ginn, Garrett Wilson, David Boston and Chris Carter, because I don't think you can expect that. But the 10, like below that, the average season, and we're talking Marvin Harrison, Emeka Ibuka, Duron Carter, guys like that. The average season of those 10 is about 11 and a half receptions, 158.5 yards receiving, and 1.5 touchdowns. So we set those as the lines, the numbers, the over under, and only 2 guys have gone over on all 3 of those. And they were Chris Olave and Devin Smith. Everybody else is, and only 4 guys went over on 2 of those. So it doesn't sound like a lot. 12 catches, 159 yards receiving, and 2 touchdowns for like a 5-star guy. But even though it's not a deep room, it's top heavy. So it's going to be difficult for like a June enrollee guy to come in there and do something significant, I think. But he could end up inside or outside. He's trained at both. He worked in the slot as a senior last year. He was injured last year as well, which kind of sucked for him. But he's a big play guy that is dangerous with the ball in his hands.
Well, don't they need one of these first-year guys? And Jeremiah Smith is the most likely candidate to be much better than Carnell Tate was last year. And I'm not taking away from Tate because he was a first-year player. And I'm not talking about just statistically. He obviously didn't have the opportunities. Just he did not look like he was a top-end Big Ten player in his first year at wide receiver. But they need that out of one of these guys.
Well, and Tate is 18 catches of the 5th most for an Ohio State freshman of all time. So, like, in terms of receivers, so like he's at the top of those 10 that I mentioned. But yeah, they need, and I fully expect them to get more from Jeremiah Smith. And I think it was maybe after the first couple of spring practices where I said 1,000 yards for him, which 15 games, 16 games, you're talking 62, 63 yards a game. But I would expect if we set the over under on Jeremiah Smith at Chris Carter's freshman records, and he owns all of them in terms of 41 catches, 648 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Like if those are the numbers, I think I'm going over on catches and yards, and I might. I don't know if I throw anything down on the touchdowns because 9 touchdown catches for a freshman is a lot. But yeah. He does need to have a significant season, and I fully expect it to be him outside, Carnell Tate outside, and Emeka Ibuka in the slot. And they've got the possibility that those 3 guys could all be 1,000-yard receivers, unless they're running the ball too much.
It's still a little bit early to really get into yields in the recruiting season, but it is camp season. Are there any rumblings about any particular headliners that we should be watching as targets over the next few weeks?
Well, I'm going to miss the first 2 camp dates next week because I'm going to be on vacation. I know that we have had some coverage here of some official visits that are going to happen, at least coming up. And let me see here as I open this up, see who all we're talking about, just to make sure I don't get this wrong. There'll be some current commitments making an official visit. Tarvos Alford, the linebacker from Florida, Deshaun Stewart, the safety from New Jersey. They're going to be making official visits. Then some guys who are not committed but will be making visits. This is a really hot one here. Cincinnati Winton Woods defensive end Justin Hill. He is ranked number 60 overall in the country, number 7 edge, and I think he does favor Ohio State, fairly strongly. So I think that he's a guy that definitely could be on commit watch perhaps during the month of June. I don't know what his plan is when he wants to announce it. Another one is the running back, Bo Jackson from Cleveland, Villa Angela, St. Joe's. He is a national top 100 player at 85. if you went to Central Casting and asked for somebody who looks like a running back, it'd be Bo Jackson. He's like 6 foot, 210 pounds. And I think most people believe he's going to be one of, if not the main running back in the 2025 class for Ohio State when all is said and done. They got a few others. DeCorian Moore, Texas wide receiver, number 5 player in the country. Most people believe he's going to end up at Texas, but he is giving Ohio State a solid look here with an official visit. And Vernell Brown from Orlando, Florida, Jones High School. He's a top 50 player. A lot of people think Ohio State may be the team to beat for him. Offensive line, as we continue to talk about, is an area that the Buckeyes have got to make some inroads and some upgrades. They've got an interior offensive lineman, Henry Fenuku. I hope I'm saying that right. Fenuku from Fort Worth, Texas, who's going to be making a visit. Just scrolling down for any other notables. They're trying to flip a guy who's committed to Alabama, Anthony Rogers, a running back, a small scat back type. He's committed to Alabama and has been committed to them for almost a full year. And we'll see, if they can get him, on campus and how that looks. So that's a lot of them. I think that, some of the key names that are going to be coming to campus during the next, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks for official visits. And obviously those 2 camp dates, what'll happen is that they will identify just a few 2025 guys for offers, but probably more likely identify more 2026 guys who are going to be high school juniors for offers and go from there out of the camp.
Yeah, and the Bo Jackson thing is interesting because there's a lot of Georgia smoke with him right now. So this would be an opportunity to maybe put some of that smoke out if they can. But it's been interesting to watch the running back recruiting situation and the net become much, much wider. But yeah, so we'll be at camp Wednesday and Thursday, and we'll have, Buckeye Huddle will have coverage there. But in terms of like names, I'm usually like 2 days before, 1 day before, tell me who I need to look at, tell me who I need to watch. And then you go and watch those guys. But it's always interesting to see guys that you've heard about. And then you'll see guys like, well, who is that guy? And you're asking like the people who do this for a living in terms of the analysts, they're like, I don't know. And you got to try and figure out who these guys are. Like last year, there was a running back from Sweden or Switzerland, one of the two. I always get them mixed up, but he was out there, and you saw like local small college coaches asking like, what offers do you have? And he's like, I think he may have been committed to Kent State or something like that, or had a Kent State offer, and maybe ended up at Western Kentucky. But like that was one of the best running backs we saw one of those days. And then you get to see like last year with Jordan Davis and Marquise Davis and Bo Jackson all camping the same day and running the same drills and kind of competing against each other. So Wednesday, Thursday next week, and then it's Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Monday, like every day, every other day for 4 days or for 4 camps, and then it ends with the 7-on-7 on the 18th. So basically camps all through the next 3 weeks. And so it's a good opportunity to talk to a bunch of kids, talk to coaches, hangers on, that are family members, just trying to get some insight on where a lot of these guys are leaning. And then it's also, we'll get a bunch of video and we'll be posting that as well so that you can get a look at the guys in the 26 and 27 class that are coming up.
The most people are on the line right now. That is typically the case. So what you do is you go back and you watch what you missed when we get done here. We also will guarantee that we will have a Buckeye show next week because we've made it 269 weeks in a row. When that will be, I don't know. Typically on Wednesday, could be some other time, but that's okay because if you subscribe and hit that bell for the notifications, then you will know when we go live. And certainly I announce it as soon as possible. Steve, enjoy vacation, sir.
It's going to be wonderful. Going to taking my daughter to Washington, D.C. for an internship on the way. So 6 hours that direction. And I think it's 8 hours south down 95 down the coastline to Hilton Head. So looking forward to that. And just going to have some fun in the sun. That's what it's all about. I'm ready for vacation. It's been, I talk about it. It was a rough 9 months with football and then going into basketball season and everything else and everything that transpired as a result of that. So I'm ready. I'm excited. So here we go.
I love the sun and certainly moved to where I moved because of that to a certain extent. However, I'm not the 25-year-old guy that, I'm looking to put what hats on and what coverings on and keep my shirt on, and I don't want to get burned and torched. So yeah, there's that part of it too. That's that at least for me needs to be taken care of as part of the equation. Tony, have fun with work.
That's why I do it, because it's fun.
So join Tony this week again. Buckeye Weekly, the podcast, BuckeyeHuddle.com. Make it on back next week. And please subscribe and hit that bell for the notifications to know when we go live for edition number 270. And we'll see you next time.